Fashion is one of the most immediate ways we communicate without words. Through cuts, colors, and textures, we express mood, personality, values, and even ideas. Queen Elizabeth I, the Queen of Silhouettes, is the perfect example of this. Her garments weren't just about luxury, they were crafted symbols of authority. Ruffs, bodices, farthingales, these created a silhouette of divine right and control. Her fashion was her brand, her armor, her power to claim space, assert identity, and rewrite cultural norms. It's a creative outlet, yes, but also a statement. Even today, your clothes say something about you. Even someone who claims, "I don't care about fashion," is actually making a statement. Fashion is unavoidable. I once knew a guy who claimed that he didn't care about fashion and he would always wear every single day gray t-shirts and flip-flops. He would say that men shouldn't wear graphic t-shirts or flashy things, fashion should be practical. But whether he realized it or not, this was a fashion philosophy. He was, in the end of it, if you think about it, still expressing himself, expressing an opinion. Let's talk about fashion and colonialism, because the hypocrisy runs deep in that area. When European colonizers first encountered indigenous peoples around the world, they were quick to call their clothing immodest, barbaric, uncivilized. Women who bared their breasts, men in skirts or wraps, were all labeled morally inferior. And colonizers forced people to cover up, to dress in European styles, be civilized, religious, and modest. But now, look at how the narrative has flipped. European cultures now see themselves as more emancipated, mocking cultures that still dress modestly, and the standard for what is free or repressed changes depending on what makes them feel superior. When it came to modesty, colonial powers were deeply hypocritical and contradictory. In Somalia, British colonizers considered the traditional guntino, a draped, shoulder-bearing garment, too indecent by Victorian standards, so they banned it, pushing Somali women toward more covered styles that reflected European or Arab Islamic modesty ideals instead of local tradition. Meanwhile, in India, the British crushed the world-renowned textile industry, not just to dominate trade, but to flood the market with their own factory-made cottons. These replacement textiles were often promoted as more proper or modest alternatives aligned with colonial moral codes, even though their real purpose was economic gain. In North Africa, French colonizers painted and photographed Amazi Berber women, often bare-chested, and distributed those images across Europe as exotic, erotic postcards. But this voyeurism had violent consequences. Over time, as colonialism deepened, veiling for many indigenous women became a form of survival, protection from sexualization and surveillance. And when it suited their interests, colonial powers didn't hesitate to flip the script. In places such as Iran and Afghanistan, veiling and unveiling have been weaponized for political gain, framed as liberation or oppression whenever it suited local elites or foreign powers. The result? Women's freedom was never the true goal. Control was. In Algeria, France used the rhetoric of liberating Muslim women, unveiling them, dressing them in European styles, as propaganda to justify violent colonial rule. They staged public ceremonies where veils were ripped from women's heads, filmed unveilings for French audiences, and circulated images of liberated Algerian women in Western dress to promote the supposed success of their mission. Meanwhile, those same women were being dispossessed, displaced, and brutalized. Many luxury brands have stolen from indigenous cultures, African tribes, or South Asian embroidery, appropriating elements they once mocked and then selling them back to the world as high fashion. Despite the common idea that Europeans brought fashion to the world, history tells a richer story. For example, Indian Maharajas were wearing exquisite pearl jewelry thousands of years before Coco Chanel even got inspired by Indian styles at a party with them without ever giving any credit. Islamic cultures introduced intricate geometric art and design to Europe at a time when Christian art mainly used religious symbols. Colonial powers exploited, degraded, and erased the origins of the styles and art they took. They put Africans in human zoos, yet stole traditional art and patterns. Take denim, for example. What is often called French denim actually has roots in the Indian danjari cloth. Meanwhile, African textile traditions such as those from Sokoto also influenced Western leatherworking techniques. The French word for fancy leather goods, maroquinerie, comes from Muslim artisans who introduced those techniques to Europe. Colonial authorities also restricted Native Americans, forcing them into reserves where they couldn't protect or trademark their traditional patterns and then stole them. In India, the once flourishing and renowned traditional textile production was banned and heavily controlled, while European industries profited. Now let's talk gender. Did you know that in the Victorian era, young boys were dressed in almost identical ways to girls? Long gowns, curls, soft fabrics, until they were breeched at around age 6. It wasn't strange, it was standard, and it reminds us that gendered fashion is invented. It's not natural or fixed, it's cultural, and it changes all the time. Pink used to be the boys' color. Heels were invented for men. So much of what we call masculine or feminine in clothing is a moving target. Queer fashion today often challenges and reclaims that fluidity, blending styles and breaking binaries. Queer fashion is often bold, theatrical, or gender fluid, and that boldness isn't random, it's political. When you've been told to hide, to erase yourself, being visible becomes an act of defiance. Some people criticize it as like, why do they have to be so in your face? But here's a double standard. When queer designers like Alexander McQueen or Jean-Paul Gaultier create dramatic fashion for straight people, it's called genius. But when queer people wear bold outfits themselves, it's too much. Bold fashion says, I am here, I'm not apologizing for existing. In honor of Pride Month, remember, from the bright bold outfits and flower crowns of Marsha P. Johnson to the eye-catching queer styles that still push boundaries today, fashion has always been more than a look. It's defiance and survival. Pride didn't begin as a parade but as an uprising against police violence. In 1969, police raided the Stonewall Inn just for being a place where queer people could exist together, at a time when same-sex relationships and gender non-conforming expressions were criminalized. The community fought back. Marsha, a black trans woman and co-founder of STAR, resisted that brutality and spent her entire life turning radical self-expression into a symbol of freedom for those the world tried to erase. Let's think about Oscar Wilde. He understood this. He once said, "Fashion is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what other people wear." Visibility is survival, and sometimes it's art. Fashion has always been a weapon of quiet or loud rebellion. Think of red lipstick. Once associated with sex workers, it became a symbol of defiance during fascist regimes. Women wore red lips as a silent protest, an act of control over their appearance. Flappers in the 1920s cut their hair, raised their hemlines, rejected corsets, challenging gender norms and conservative expectations. Punk in the 70s ripped shirts, safety pins, DIY everything, a screaming critique of consumerism and conformity. But fashion also enforces conformity. Uniforms reduce individuality, they signal power, obedience, and control. In Nazi Germany, military fashion projected authority and domination. In concentration camps, uniforms stripped people of identity, reducing them to numbers and erasing them their humanity. This is why queer communities often reject uniformity. Bold dress becomes a refusal to disappear, a declaration of visibility against erasure. And that's what's beautiful about fashion, in my opinion. Marginalized communities have driven fashion forward again and again throughout history. Black culture, for example, created the blueprint for modern streetwear. Designers like Willie Smith, who founded Williewear in the 1980s, helped define what we now call streetwear, blending Black urban style with high fashion and making it accessible to everyone. Baggy jeans, sneakers, jewelry, logo-heavy styles, etc. Love it or hate it. They were first mocked, then adopted and absorbed into the mainstream. This cycle happens constantly. Ridiculed when it's marginal, celebrated when it's rich or white. Even red lips were once low class until high society claimed them. That shift reflects how fashion slowly absorbs rebellion, sanitizing it for mass consumption. Sanitizing is the word here. Who expresses an idea matters just as much as the idea itself. There's a theory called hemline theory. It suggests skirt length reflects societal optimism. In times of prosperity, hemlines rise, and in downturns, they fall. It's not a perfect rule, but it tells us something powerful. Fashion is psychological. It responds to collective mood, economic confidence, and social values. We dress not just for the weather, but for the world. Fashion is history, politics, architecture, rebellion, and imagination, all stitched together. If you want to see fashion's hopeful side, watch my video on retrofuturism, how people in the 60s imagined the future through metallics, geometric cuts, and space-age silhouettes. It's very interesting. Fashion can express dreams, optimism, a better world, the future we want to wear before it arrives. Fashion isn't shallow, it's a mirror, a weapon, a language, and a flag. Drop a comment below and tell me how you express yourself through fashion or how you don't. And check out my videos on color, texture, silhouette, and retrofuturism if you want more fashion deep dives. Remember to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, wear what you like, what makes you feel like you, and see you in the next video. Bye!